This conference will now be recorded.
If you don't mind, I'm going to record it. I know there's a few people that wanted to make it that couldn't, and so I could send them the video this way. Hey, Gazelle. Gazelle,
sorry. Sorry, turning on my cameras and my microphones and on and off.
No worries. You like my hat?
Absolutely.
Hey, Andrew.
Well, he was there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Andrew. It's Christina.
Hey.
Hi, Giselle. Giselle. Miss Pitt. Transition.
Well, I think we've got everybody. Just about everybody. I might be missing like one or two more people, but I think we're close enough. Okay. Paige just emailed me saying that she can hear, but Mike and her camera are not working. Well, if you can hear us and see us, then that's, I don't know what else to say. I'm going to also record this as well. So if you know you have to watch it later, then we can do it that way. Hi, and who just joined us? Well, we'll just do introductions and then we'll go from there. So happy Cinco de Mayo. I found this in my closet, so I'm like, I gotta wear it, but I'm not gonna wear it long. I'm Keith Pirtle. I'm the program manager for PARB. All right, Laura, there's your name. All right, welcome. And then Christina, I thought maybe we'd go around just real quickly and just kind of say your name and just kind of maybe what county you're in. And if I don't know if you have a special background or something that might be helpful, but don't feel like you have to give your life story. But Christina, will you go next?
Sure. I'm Christina Watley. I'm the Oklahoma County PARB coordinator. I have 7 boards right now in Oklahoma County, and I love each and every one of them. I'm so happy to be getting new members joining and can't wait to get y'all started. So that's me.
All right, Chris, you're next on my screen.
Okay. All right. My name is Chris Perry, and I am a very new board member, and I live in Love County.
Well, Jenna, why don't we have you go first? I mean, next, since you're in the same county.
Sure. I'm Jenna Escobedo, and I'm a new member as well. We have our first meeting next week, and I'm with Love County.
Wonderful. And just so the rest of you know, Don Sessions, who's been the chair of that board for a long time, his health's pretty bad, and so his wife Barbara, who does everything along with him, have recruited you guys, which is great. Like you said, your first meeting in a while is happening, or post-COVID, and with the new members is happening on, I think Wednesday of next week. All right. Gazal, will you want to say hello?
Yeah, I'm Gazal Pitt. I work for the Office of Client Advocacy. I do the Youth Served Grievance Program and Vulnerable Adult Grievance Program for DDS services. Previous history, worked on the computer system, made those screens, permanency planning, supervisor, worker, case aid, and compliance manager in the past. So, and now I'm in a new PARB. So,
And you're signing up for Oklahoma County.
yes.
Awesome, awesome. And speaking of
Yep.
Oklahoma,
I
Go
think we're
ahead.
going to put Giselle on the transition board.
great.
She attended that meeting and fit right in. So
Well, speaking of Oklahoma County and other state employees, Andrew, you want to go next?
Hello, I'm Andrew Delali. I am with the Department of Mental Health. I oversee projects related to homeless and runaway youth. And I live in Payne County, but I am serving on Oklahoma County boards.
Glad to have you. And Laura, you're also from Oklahoma County. You want to say hello?
Yes, hi, I'm new. I'm Laura. I'm from Oklahoma County, and I'm a retired social worker just recently. I was in private practice for 20 some odd years.
That's right. You were an LCSW.
Hmm. Yes,
All right.
I'm
Well,
recovering LCSW.
awesome. Well, I'm an MSW. I never went the clinical route. I couldn't handle that. But good for you. Okay, Paige, can you? Well, I don't think you can. If you can't say hello, try. There's a mute button at the bottom of the screen that you can click on or off to turn from red to green. All right, I don't think that's going to work. All right, Sheila, will you say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sheila McHenry. I'm new, and I'm from Garfield County. I'm a forensic interviewer at the CAC here in Garfield County, and I'm also a supervisor of the CASA program.
All right, you want to tell them what a CAC is?
A Child Advocacy Council.
All
So, I don't know if you guys are familiar with child advocacy councils, but here, what we do at our agency is we provide services for children who've been allegations of abuse or neglect. So we do forensic interviews, and then we also do services for counseling, and also we provide medical at our campus as well. So.
All right, well, welcome. And we're so excited that you guys are interested. And Christina and I's job is to support you, train you, hold your hand, pat you on the head, whatever it takes. You all are the ones that keep this going, and our job is to support you. So that's why we have a job. So if you all need something, reach out to us. For Oklahoma County folks, certainly that's going to be Christina. For everybody else, that's going to be probably your chairperson first and me second. Chairperson for like your regular meetings, and for any technical assistance or questions like that, then probably me. A few of you have extensive child welfare background, and I'm sorry I'm going to be covering just a little bit of the basics on that you already are aware of, for those that aren't as aware, and then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts of what PARB is. A good review is always fun, and if I totally missed something, Gazal or anybody else on the child welfare side, just let me know. So, if you're not familiar with juvenile court, and when you're talking about PARB, PARB is all about working within the court system. We basically do an administrative review. Administrative meaning we're looking at paper and talking to people, doing an administrative review of deprived court cases, and we're making recommendations to the judge. That's the main thing. So we serve the discretion of the judge, and we serve as a arm of the court or an arm of the judge. In deprived court cases. So if I'm saying deprived court and you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me just give you a little bit of a, I'm talking about juvenile court system in general. I mean, there's family court. If you get a divorce, you might be familiar with family court. Who gets custody, who gets visitation, et cetera, et cetera. That's family court. I think everybody can envision that pretty well. Delinquency court is if a child has broken a law, whether it's like a status offense, like something that wouldn't be a law breaking for an adult, like curfew, for example, or even something serious like robbery. The juvenile court system is intended to treat kids as kids. They don't necessarily have the same repercussions. They can age out at 18 or 21, so it's not, so they don't have the same kind of level of accountability, or they assume that kids can be rehabilitated because they're kids, and that's what the delinquent system is set up for. And you often hear the Office of Juvenile Affairs, they're involved with the delinquent side of things, kids that have broken the law. Deprived court is child welfare. So I think everybody's fairly familiar with child welfare. So to kind of and that's mainly what we work through. A few of the boards across the state actually work on delinquent cases, but not very many. Most of the boards focus only on deprived cases, which is really what we I think should be doing. So what is the deprived court system? It's set up to protect children from their legal primary caregivers due to some sort of confirmed abuse or neglect. So if some, the way the process works is if there's some, you notice, I don't know, your school teacher knows some bruises on, one of your students' arms, and you call the police. Child welfare comes out and does an investigation. They feel like that there is sufficient evidence to take basically to court, and they'll do an emergency. Let's get to that real quick. Okay. Maybe I should have done this a little bit different order. They'll basically do an emergency hearing to see if the child I gotta have the terms in front of me. Well, basically an emergency order of like custody, emergency hearing. Christina, help me with the wording.
They'll get, they'll either be offered family-centered services, or if they need a higher level, they will get a court order from the judge allowing the pickup. It's called an emergency pickup order. Then a few days after that, you want me to continue?
Yeah, sure. Might as well.
Then they schedule an emergency custody hearing, discuss the case, and the DA will decide whether or not to file a petition. So the DA will file a petition with all of the allegations, and sometimes they'll do a show cause.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, the show cause, and then the case just continues from there. But yeah, that's generally how it works.
Well, thank you on the spot. I was looking for the word show cause and just got totally caught up in the process. But basically, I just want to kind of throw out the concept that, if the investigation happens and there is enough evidence that there's real concern for the welfare of that child, and that the primary caregivers are not able to protect that child, either not able or not willing, or just aren't protecting that child, then they basically become legal custody of the state or the court or child welfare, all kind of at really at the same time. So what happens, just so you kind of understand the process, once this information, this evidence has, and they may have already pulled the kid out of the home at this point for an emergency detention, but once the judge, the district attorney will file and say, here's the evidence. There was drugs, there was physical abuse, there was bruising, there was whatever. Once the assistant district attorney files a deprived petition, basically saying, petitioning the judge saying, this child is deemed as officially deprived, and the court or the judge rules in favor of that petition, then the child is adjudicated as deprived. Does that make sense? I know it's a little caught up in the legalese, but basically, I mean, and things could have happened before this. They went and investigated. They didn't feel like there was enough going on. They could have recommended other services. But once it gets to the point where it's in front of a court, the judge, and they say, yes, this kid is deprived, then it becomes kind of state custody. So between that moment in time until the point that the judge says they can either return home or the parental rights are terminated and they're adopted, or they're put into some sort of long-term guardianship, or they turn 18, any of those things, we call that permanence. I think I've got that as a slide. Yeah, reaching permanence. So during that time, so between the time the judge says the parents aren't safe, we're removing the kids, to the point that those kids are put somewhere permanent, that period of time, the court is involved, and that's the part that PARB's looking at, that they're looking at what's going on in the case and kind of keeping up with it. And in Oklahoma, that takes about 18 months. About in state fiscal year 2019, that took 555 days on it. Obviously, average can go a little higher or lower, but that's a year and a half. Imagine a year and a half for a 5-year-old or 4-year-old. That's a year and a half where a lot of things can go, really wrong. So in state fiscal year 2019, there were 4,416 kids entered out of home care, and 4,889 left out of home care. So that's a big chunk of kids that are going in and out of care within the Department of Human Services, and basically where the Department of Human Services and the court has legal responsibility for them. So is that kind of making sense for those that aren't that familiar with the court system? If there's some sort of proof of abuse, then the state's going to take over until a point in time that they can have some permanent situation. So who are the players in the court system, the deprived system? Well, there's the parents, obviously. Parents are going to want, hopefully going to want to have their kids back. They're going to go to court on a regular basis and say, I'm sober now. I've got a job. I've gone to domestic violence counseling, whatever, to get their kids back. The parents are also going to have attorneys that represent their interest. And you'll have multiple attorneys that represent their interest. The kids, obviously, too. And the kids often have attorneys, or they have attorneys as well representing their interests. You have court-appointed special advocates. You heard that mentioned earlier. If you're not familiar with what they are, we work with them a lot. They're assigned to particular families. As PARB members, we're not assigned to families. We look at all of the cases, or a big chunk of the cases. And they are involved kind of on a regular basis with that family to kind of advocate for their needs, as opposed to more of an administrative review. Assistant district attorney, they're the ones going to be filing the petitions, kind of representing the state. The judge, obviously, child welfare workers. And you hear about permanency workers. You may not know this, there's different types of child welfare workers. There's Child Protective Services, who does most of the investigation, and then permanency workers that are working more towards that period of time. So when you're attending PARB meetings and you'll hear people talk about, they're in permanency or they're in child protective services, or they might even be in foster care placement. There's lots of little microcosms within child welfare. But obviously they're all working towards the same goal. And it's the judge's job to sort through all of these competing perspectives. As you can imagine, foster parents might have one opinion, kid might have another, parents might have another, district attorney might have another. It's up to the judge to kind of make those decisions. And our job as PARB members is to help the judge with information and make recommendations ourselves to the judge. So what is PARB in a nutshell? To me, all it really is a group of locally trained, hopefully you'll be trained well and supported, hopefully supported well, with a broad legislative authority that meet regularly. Most PARB boards meet, I think every PARB board that's represented here meets once a month. Some meet a little less often, some meet more often, but most of them meet once a month to review the deprived cases within that county and make recommendations to the judge. We'll go over kind of the purpose for the recommendations more here in a minute. But it's basically to ensure the safety of the child, encourage best practices, and promote that permanency. There's that word again. When we say permanency, we really mean stability and safety. They could be put, with maybe, grandma or aunt. But if that's not a permanent situation, might be a great temporary situation, but it's not a permanent situation. You want to move towards that permanency, that kind of forever home for that child, while that child is in state custody. And again, you remember I was kind of defining state custody as the time that between the child is adjudicated as deprived until they reach some sort of permanency and the judge, signs off on that. Is that making sense? Okay. Good. So why do we need why do we need PARB boards? Well, we want to make sure that the children don't linger in foster care, that they don't get forgotten about, basically. And it can happen where kids can get lost in the system. So reviewing the cases on a regular basis helps make sure that they don't get lost. Provide oversight and support for the child welfare judges and foster parents. Sometimes I talk about our boards being almost like a jury. It's a group of peers that basically just kind of keeps the whole deprived court system honest. I mean, the deprived court system is trying to be honest, but it functions a certain way in Atoka, and it functions a certain way in Ardmore, and it functions a certain way in Tulsa and Oklahoma County. And just having a group that can kind of keep an eye on what's going on is important. So, support, protect, monitor. Oh, where's my badge? Darn it, I forgot to grab my badge. You see over my shoulder, whoop, that side. That's our theme. So everybody, that's your one homework assignment. You got to memorize our theme. So who are we supporting? Who does PARB support? And I really want to hear your answers.
Would it be the children and
Children.
families?
Yes, who else? Children and families, yes.
Judge.
Judge, yes, very much. I hear that all the time. The judges will say, well, the thing I love most about PARB is there's people in my community that I see, at Walmart or wherever else that actually know the decisions that I'm trying to make, and are party to it. Anybody else?
What about other members of the board? Each other?
Sure, yeah, certainly. Support each other.
The worker and the decision making.
I keep clicking too many times. Yes, exactly. Okay, how about protect? Who does PARB help protect by making these recommendations and kind of agreeing on these recommendations? That's a trick question.
Children.
It's protecting the child.
Right. Well, it's also protecting the judge. let's say the judge is in the middle of terminating a parent's rights, and there's concern, that the parent in that community whose rights are being terminated, I don't know, it's a school principal or something. Well, I mean, that can really put that judge in political hot seat. But if the PARB board also, who knows the case like the judge knows it, is recommending the same thing, then that kind of protects them. Same with child welfare. Child welfare is trying to make hard decisions. Attorneys are trying to help. DAs. So you're protecting everybody. So I've kind of alluded to what's the answer to the third one on monitor then.
The system.
Yes, the system and the same people. So to me, you're supporting, protecting, and monitoring the same people. You're supporting the judge. You're also monitoring that judge. And I don't mean in a mean way. You're just helping keep an eye on things. And you're also protecting them. So you're doing all three of those things at once. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind as you're serving. That this is the difference we're making. We're supporting, protecting, and monitoring the entire deprived court system. Absolutely. Okay. Any questions so far? So PARB's legislative authority. I think this is pretty important to know. The PARBs were created by the state legislature in the early 80s for kind of the reasons we talked about already. And they created specific legislation, statutes, laws that said that PARB members may review juvenile court records. So any court records and any Department of Human Services, child welfare agency records that pertain to that child. So that's pretty huge. Not everybody gets to do that. So being able to look at those records is very important. PARB may also conduct interviews or invite to PARB meetings anyone associated with a case they are reviewing. So you'll learn, when you attend a meeting, that most of the time child welfare is there, but you could invite law enforcement. They don't come very often, but they could. Tribal representatives, CASA, district attorneys, child's attorneys, anybody involved in the case or anybody that knows anything of that case, you actually have the authority to have them be part of your meeting or find out information from them, call them. So what are some of the goals of these recommendations? If by, and this is a big one, if by identifying maybe a service, identifying maybe, I don't know, that there's a program for parents that are using, math or something like that, that maybe you're aware of and others aren't, and the director of that program, so you can get somebody in, faster than maybe somebody else. You might be able to make a recommendation that's going to shorten the length of time until permanence has been achieved. And the shorter amount of time until permanence, that's better for everybody, right? Think of the trauma of a 6-year-old away from their parents, or a 6-year-old that doesn't know where they're going to live, who's been abused every day until the age of 6, and they don't know, where they're going to be safe the rest of their life. Anything you can do to shorten that time to permanence, the better. Highlight timeline issues, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. There's some legal kind of timelines. You got to do this by a certain time and that by a certain time. But you can imagine a judge with a full caseload is sometimes those timeline issues can get away from them. So identifying those can be helpful. Identify and bring resources to the table the court may not know about. Kind of already mentioned that. And just provide insight to the case that the court may have. We've already kind of just went over this, validating the efforts of DHS, validating efforts of the court, and holding everybody accountable as well. So beyond case review, our statutes also talk about, most of the time, all you're going to be doing is reviewing the cases when you meet regularly. But if you start to identify something, you know, seems like the district attorney is never filing an abuse case in our county. Seems like the parents are never getting adequate, you know, legal representation. Seems like it'd be so much better if we had a substance abuse provider in our county. If you identify those systemic issues, then that's part of your job too. Just, you know, not every meeting necessarily, but keep an eye out for those systemic issues and then raise them in your community. We have an annual report that the PARB does, and we ask for systemic issues and recommendations from all the local boards every year, and then those go to our state post-adjudication review board, which I'll talk about later, and then also go to the Commission on Children and Youth, which goes to the legislature. So if you identify issues, systemic issues, I certainly want to encourage you to try to address them in your local community, but you could also move those forward in a more formal process as well. Our statutes say we should encourage meetings between various public and private agencies. Again, if there's, you know, you may be in a unique position because of your authority to be able to review these cases that not everybody understands. And any connections you can make, you're certainly encouraged to do that. And of course, assess any community resources as well. So let me just talk a little bit about, has anyone actually been to a PARB meeting yet besides Christina? All right, it's all good, okay. Can't see everybody. There it goes. Is that it? I think so. Well, let me just talk a little bit about the process. So you show up at a meeting. The current, in Oklahoma County, Christina is going to identify your cases because about a third, more than a third of all the deprived cases in the state go through Oklahoma County. And even with 7 boards, they can't cover them all. So based on whatever board you're on, Christina will identify your cases. Every other county, like Love County, for example, or Garfield County, you're going to look at every single case that is coming up before the docket. So if you're meeting in, you know, May, then someone, probably your chair or maybe secretary, is going to get from the judge's bailiff a list of all of the deprived court cases that are coming up for review. So they're identified, and then someone's going to, again, unless you're the chair, which you're not going to be on day one, you just have to show up at the meeting. But and then the court clerk is going to be handed that list, and you'll pull those case files. And we typically meet in the courthouse pretty much all the time. You meet in the courthouse because that's where the case files are, and they don't like the case files to leave, understandably. So you meet in the courthouse, look at the case files. Child welfare also typically creates a report on what's going on in that case, or they show up in person, or they do both. I don't think child welfare comes to Love County. We might try to fix that. I know they come to Garfield County, but they rotate in and out all morning in Garfield County. But, you know, so you have child welfare is going to know more about that case than anybody else. So they're going to do some sort of report, either in person or in writing or phone or some combination. The case information is in review. Typically, Christina, for most of her boards, will assign you a case saying, you know, hey, ahead of time, here's this Smith case. I'd like you to spend some time reviewing it before we meet in 3 weeks. For like Love County, when we get there on Wednesday, they're going to hopefully have a box of all the deprived case files, and we'll lay them on the table and hand them out. So you'll have a case. If there's 5 people and 15 cases, then everybody's going to get 3 cases. So you'll pull those out and you just kind of read them and scan them, and we'll talk a little bit more of that. And you know, if I haven't said it yet, don't feel like you need to know everything in your first meeting. This This takes some time to figure out, and you don't have to be perfect. Anybody with common sense can see something glaring that looks awful. The more you know, though, the more sophisticated your recommendation will be, but that'll come with time. So the case information is reviewed, and then a recommendation is made on a form. I'll show you what that form looks like in a little bit. And then that form is submitted to the judge, back to the case file and the court clerk, and becomes part of that court record. So when the judge is getting ready to hear that case, he'll look for your recommendation and take that into consideration on how to decide on that case or what things to recommend. That makes sense? Christina, anything on assigning cases you want to mention for Oklahoma County?
Well, like you said, in Oklahoma County, there's just so many that I typically assign ones that really need that other set of eyes on it. Because if everything's going well, the parents are doing great. You know, it's headed toward trial reunification. You know, I'll keep it on my radar, but there's not really a lot of recommendations that can be made, you know, except good job, you know. So I look for the ones that really need that other set of eyes. On new members, I take it easy. I don't give them like a heinous and shocking right off the bat. But I search dockets every day looking for new cases to assign. So in fact, I was doing that today earlier.
All right. Well, I already talked about. You good, Christine?
Was there anything else on assigning cases?
No, and you know, again, for Oklahoma County, especially since you're doing it all virtually right now, if people want to sit in those cases or in one of your meetings and they haven't yet, they can certainly do that.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's I'm having one tomorrow. I think I included Laura on that one and Andrew. But yeah, I encourage people to sit in on a meeting, kind of get a feel of what we do. What are we looking for? What recommendations? What questions do we have? You know, for the workers or the foster parents or things like that. So it's neat. We had a visitor today on the DV board, and she's going to be sending in her application soon. So
Good.
yeah.
Well, and I know, because I mean, I kind of felt that way when I attended my first meeting. You feel a little lost. I mean, think about it. If you walk into a kitchen at a restaurant and this group of people have been working together for a few years, they've got their own language, their own way of doing things, their own that makes sense to them, that is going to be kind of foreign to you. And every part does it a little bit differently, but you will quickly fit in. But they all basically do the same thing. You're reviewing cases, and you'll get kind of like we do tonight. You'll have some people that have spent 20 years in child welfare and know all the terms, or they're an LCSW. You'll get people that have, you know, or retired teachers or other things, and they just not as familiar. But you don't have to be an expert to see when things are not working well. But and any time that you spend, you're going to learn these terms pretty quickly. All right, well, let me go. I kind of already mentioned the history. So those are our statutes if you want to look them up. And this is kind of referring to some of them. So again, we were created in the 80s, and we're supposed to have a post-adjudication review board in all 26 court districts across Oklahoma, and any, you know, in any individual counties. So I'll go ahead and skip. Yeah, there's the map right there. So that's our current map. So those little pie shapes are the judicial districts. So if you see like a Canadian county is its own district, you go over here to like Northwest, you know, Ellis, Roger Mills, back on Washita, and Custer are all, you know, part of the same district. And right now we actually do have one in Custer. I don't know. We don't have one in Ellis. So like I'm trying to get one. We talked about not having one in Carter County. The only one we have in that district right now is in Love County, but I'm trying to get one started in Carter County and Johnston County. You can review the cases from another county, but you'd have to go to that county courthouse. It's tough to do. So most counties only review the cases in that county. Any question on that? That's just more of an FYI. I think it's interesting to give you context, especially for the folks that are in the non-Oklahoma City and Tulsa areas. Canadian County Board just started up and had about 3 or 4 meetings right before the pandemic, and I'm trying to get it going again. So anyway. So our boards are comprised of at least 5 members. Most of our boards are 5 members. Some are maybe a few more. And a couple might be a few less, even though we're supposed to be at a minimum of 5. Those boards are having growing opportunities. You're signing up for a 3-year term. I don't know if you knew that or not. I'm certainly always looking for someone with child welfare experience, someone who's also been a foster parent. But if you have any interest in keeping an eye on the deprived case load, then you are good. Each year you elect a chairperson. You tend to have the same people that kind of keep that position a while. And the judge needs to know what your board looks like. So just, kind of what our statutes say, that you're supposed to review the case of an adjudicated deprived child, and everybody knows what that means now, that they're in state custody and that they're officially, identified as deprived, meaning that their primary caregivers are not able to take care of them. Or a child who's alleged to be deprived every 6 months. Or you hear of the ICPC cases, that's the interstate compact. It's basically if there's a child welfare case, say in Wichita, Kansas, but then the child is living with a relative in Oklahoma City. Well, that court case is in Wichita, Kansas. That's where the hearings are. But all the child welfare activity is going to take place where that child lives. And those are a little bit harder to identify because they're beyond the deprived docket. You got to get that list from DHS. But that's also part of what we're supposed to be doing. We also, like I said, want to look at cases right before they come up for hearing because all these things are timely. You don't want to make a recommendation and then the judge not going to see that case for 4 or 5 months because the recommendation's not going to really make sense anymore. Nor do you want to make a recommendation right after the judge saw them because they're not going to be looking at that case again for a week. Let me talk a little bit about the PARB forms. So, and again, you don't really have to worry about this. Your chair will worry about this, but there's a set agenda. We have to follow within the Open Meetings Act laws. Like some of you are probably very familiar with Open Meetings Act, and some of you have never known what I'm talking about. It's basically state law that has been around for a long time, making sure that basically anytime state business happens, and this is state business, it's funded by state, it's about state custody. Anytime the state business happens, the general public should know and be able to participate. They should know when that is and where to go so they can participate. But since we're looking at confidential information, kids in child welfare custody, very secure information, we do it in an executive session, meaning the public can't be there present once you start actually looking at cases. But technically, so basically you have to post the agenda, usually at the, at the courthouse in some public place. And the public could come to your meeting and say a few words. Once they've said a few words, and they leave and you go into your session. Nobody really, it ends up just being a bureaucratic compliance issue because nobody really comes to talk at the PARB. The public doesn't typically come, but you do have to comply with that. So if you wonder, again, since you're not chair or secretary, you're not going to have to worry about that right away, but you do need to know that it exists. So that's kind of the standard agenda. Christina was talking about how she tracks cases earlier. Again, that's not something you necessarily need to worry about, but a chair or secretary might say, well, and Christina will do this too, say that, hey, we're looking at the Smith family. I know they're not, we looked at them this month, and they're not going before the judge for another 6 months, but I kind of want to look at them again. So then Christina can mark it and say, let's look at this case again. So you can look at it more often, and this is a good way just to make sure that you're reviewing all the cases when they need to be reviewed. Again, that'll make more sense at a later date. This is the board minutes form, just tracking who was there and what cases. Like I said, there's written reports from child welfare. There's about 3 different versions out there. It really doesn't matter which one you use. If you're going to an established board, which you all will be, then there'll be a kind of established way that it's done. We may be revamping things in Love County. So it's kind of a checklist. I just wanted you to see what they look like. So if you're sitting there reviewing a case, you'll be looking at this manila folder that has all this case information in it. And then you also will probably be looking at the DHS report too. And then that's the recommendations and finding form. So basically, there's a very good copy of it, but you put at the top the name of the family, the JD number, which is the court case number, who the child welfare worker is, your name, anybody that's part of the case, and then write your recommendation. And I'll probably pull up the box, Christina, and we can look at some actual things. This is what I was trying to look for before. I need to move this around. So basically the court process, I've already been over it, but just want to make sure that you didn't get it. I emailed out this PowerPoint right before our training. So, first you've got the allegations, then you've got the findings by DHS, you have the show cause hearing, file a petition, and then you have the adjudication hearing within 60 to 90 days. So it even takes a while until there's adjudicated. So the post-adjudication review board, we start looking at cases once the state has taken custody. Dispositional hearings within 30 days of that, that's basically where the kid's going to go. And then do review hearings every 6 months after that. Kim, who covers the Tulsa County PARB board, she does the legal process a lot better than I do. But those are some of kind of the highlights. And then we'll do permanency review 12 to 14 months from removal. That's basically trying to figure out where they're going to go for permanence. And then reunification or termination of criminal rights happens there too. I did keep all right, I've got a few slides on the legal process. You'll hear this term a lot too, the individual service plan. It's basically a treatment plan. I come from the mental health background more than child welfare background. So it's basically a treatment plan for the parents. So the assistant district attorney is going to say something like, we attest that this child is deprived based on, dad's domestic violence and, endangering the child. So the individual service, and there might be like 5 different things, mom's got a substance abuse issue, it might be all these things that the district attorney is kind of identified, and then that goes into that. And so then the individual service plan will address those. So mom's going to address substance abuse by going to substance abuse treatment at this place. Domestic violence classes are going to take place there. So that kind of goes hand in hand. Yeah. We also hear a lot about visitation plans. As you can imagine, child might be removed from the home and not, may miss their siblings, so they want to see siblings, maybe grandparents. So making sure that, visitations happen on a regular basis is pretty important as well. Kind of just, refers to some of those different hearings you could read later. There are some like mandatory grounds for termination. And some of these things hit kind of the timeline I was talking about earlier. So like prior to the end of the 15th month, when a child has been placed into foster care, they have, if it's like 15 in the last 22 months, then, the parent's rights can be terminated. Or if an infant is abandoned after 60 days, there's always kind of timeline. So that's something you can look at as a PARB member too, to kind of keep an eye on, has the child been abandoned? Has it been 60 days? If the individual service plan has been ordered and there's been no measurable progress, then the judge needs to also consider termination for that. Again, this is more of like a reference document, so you can kind of keep an eye on that. So what are we looking for and why? Before I go into that, any questions by anybody? I know there's a little dry stuff. Maybe I need to put the sombrero back on. The legal stuff is the most dry, I think. This is more of the common sense. So what are we looking for and why? When we look at, remember, we're looking at the case file. We're hearing from DHS, hopefully. We're seeing what DHS wrote about this family. We might look at the CASA report. CASA does a written report that's usually real helpful. So what are we looking for? We're looking at the petition. Again, the petition is what the district attorney said that I was just talking about, that it's basically a document where he's telling he or she is telling the judge that this kid is deprived based on these conditions because this has happened. So that's one of the things that when I'm reviewing a case, I like to look at those first. And when I'm in Love County on Wednesday next week, we'll pull a case out and we'll look at those together. Because I kind of want to know what's going on. I mean, is it a drug issue? Is it domestic violence, physical abuse? Is it maybe mental retardation or serious mental health issues going on? Maybe the parents aren't mentally capable of caring for the child. What are the things that are going on? That helps me a lot. Also, the initial court report, child welfare has to do the same thing. They have to say what they found at the house when they picked up the kid. So that's something I think that's real, interesting to read. I always look at the individual service plan because that is something that you can certainly give feedback on as well. And then, Christina, you like to look at the review hearing minutes and orders as well, right? Because that's kind of what the judge kind of had to say based on the last. Anything, can you expand on that?
Yeah, but basically, it's everything that happened in court that day. From parents appear, attorneys appear, and it's everything that happened in that court hearing that day. And sometimes, because the DHS reports have to go to the judge before the court hearing. So there could be something happen in those 5 days, that is just discovered in court. I had that actually happen on something today, but yeah, I think it's very important. And I usually just skip through the middle. I don't know how they look in other counties, but in Oklahoma County, those can be like 9 pages long. I just want to know the front page, who all was involved, and the judges, the court minute itself. So, but it's an important document. It just, you know, shows what happened in court. Yeah. So, yeah, that's basically it. You're on
Take
mute.
off mute. Yep, I forget to do that. I'm going to pull up the box real quick and share a couple of things, if you don't mind. Quickest way to get there. So I think it's really anything else you can add, Christina, to you know, the art of looking at a case file.
Well, it's good to, like, if you get counseling reports or psychological evaluations, drug abuse evaluations, because you can glean a lot of information for those and gauge, you know, if the parent's progress or lack thereof. Just anything that sheds some light on what's been going on in the case itself. You know, if the children are 14 and over, you want to make sure that they're getting resources to begin their independent living services. Or they changed that now to OKSA, Oklahoma Successful Adulthood Program. And it's good to look at those documents too, and don't leave those kiddos out. You know, there's tons of programs available to those children that are older, and you just want to make sure they're hooked up with the right stuff. So.
Exactly. Cool. Thank you. I pulled up some actual court documents. So here's a petition right here. I don't know how well you guys can see that. I can try to zoom in a little bit. You kind of have to go through all the legalese to get to the meat. I'm trying to find the meat on that one. Well, that's like an unknown. Well, mother tested positive for cocaine. Mother has a history of mental health concern. So this, you know, this kind of mental health court, mother diagnosed with schizophrenia. So you can see pretty quickly kind of some of the things that are going on. And this is basically what the district attorney is filing in this petition to the court, saying what's going on with this case. So you know that the individual service plan is going to talk about getting mental health care. History of physical altercations. So there's some, you know, domestic violence there. That kind of gives you a sense. And there's a permanency review order. So you just have these little snippets.
So I went from page 1 to page 7. You know, that's called cutting out the middle part.
So you'll scan these, and you know there'll be a lot of black ink that doesn't mean anything to you until you get to a paragraph like that. This where you're seeing, okay, mother serving a sanction at Naval Bassett Prison, and the assistant district attorney has been unable to serve her with what's an S&M?
Service and notification, I think.
Oh, probably, yeah. Yep, service and notification, yeah, serve basically. So they'll just be different, you know, here's on the age of the child. This is the individual service plan. So you can see the age of and you want to know the age of the child because their service plan is going to be different based on their age. Kids in a COVID shelter. So you'll, you know, again, when we're like in Love County, you're in a county courthouse, you'll have a hard copy file that'll have this that you can kind of flip through. So sometimes it feels like you're trying to read a book out of a dictionary. But I wanted to find an actual recommendation too.
Yeah, if you're in Oklahoma County's box, I should have a folder for recommendations.
Well, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. It's only pulling up this one case. Oh, there we go. Whoops. All right, just take a second, and it's a good way to see what real life looks like. Did you put some recommendations in today, Christina?
I'm sorry, what? No, I haven't done them for today. Transition, the case that you just had in there, that the
I'll look at the
recommendations should be in there.
recommendation. Which file should I pull from?
Go ahead and do transition. Or board 2, or
There's recommendations. So
it's going to be, well, yeah, there's March 2. Yeah.
yeah, so this is what the recommendation form looks like. So this is, what you'll be using to make your recommendation. So at the top, list the judge, review of what case. I'll zoom in a little bit more on that too.
There you go.
The JD number is the court case number. KK number is the child welfare number. Again, if you're new to this, some of this you'll certainly get help filling out. What board you're at, who the workers are, the different parties, name of the child, age, and type of placement. Basically where they're living. Kinship just means a relative, as opposed to foster care or something like that. So here's the recommendation that this board did. So driver's ed check with OCSA for funding. OCSA is the independent living service that the DHS provides. So I guess this kid's of an age, they should be in driver's ed, and I guess they weren't. So you all were recommending that OCSA figure out how to pay for that.
Yeah, there's funding available for driver's ed and all kinds of things for the older kids.
Can you just kind of go over that recommendation a little bit, Christina? Like, explain it.
Okay. I think the child is 16, so he qualifies for OCSA services. He was interested in getting his driver's license. So we recommended that he check with his OCSA worker for funding for his driver's license or for driver's ed. And then we wanted to also make sure that they double check his essential documents, which are his social security number or social security card, birth certificate, and then do a credit check to make sure, because some of these kids have really rotten parents that will use their social security numbers to get, electricity and then not pay the bill. Let's see, something. Okay.
A lot of it's self-explanatory, Christina. I just wanted you to. That's probably good.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, that was perfect. Just saying that's enough. So anyway, does anybody have any questions? That's basically what a recommendation looks like. Everybody is a little bit different. A lot of boards do it more in a narrative. This is more in a bullet form. So All right, well, I'll go back to the PowerPoint then. So those are some of the important documents to look at. Again, it's going to make a lot more sense once you actually start doing it. If you're in Oklahoma County, your screen is going to look like basically what I shared, because Christina will put those in the box for you. If you're anywhere else, you'll be looking at a hard copy case file in the courthouse. But you'll have experienced people around you to help you navigate that. What our statutes say we're supposed to be looking at is the appropriateness of the goals and objectives of the individual service plan. We just looked at a service plan, so it'll have in it like goals and objectives for the family, the parents to do. You want to see if those make sense. Are they age appropriate? Are you considering, the mental health needs? Like that one mom had mental health needs. I mean, if it had a goal, I don't know, that didn't seem to make sense with her mental health needs, then you would want to, maybe call that to attention. Should the out-of-home placement continue? Trying to maximize family stability. Review the efforts of agencies to find permanent placement. Again, part of the reason that PARB exists is so that kids don't get stuck in foster care forever. So we're trying to avoid. And I've already kind of went over this, but just, the goals and recommendations. You want to shorten the time to permanency, highlight timeline issues, bring resources to the table. So there's kind of just more general advice I've kind of already gone over a little bit. I like to look at the deprived petition, look at the ISP, is it doable? Does it state what the kids should also be doing? Look at visitation, is it, happening like it should? Or, if maybe driving's not possible, maybe FaceTime or phone calls for regular contact. The younger the kid, the more important visitation is. Is every effort being made to put kids with somebody that, knows them and loves them? Look and see if it's an ICWA case, which I'll mention that in a minute. Look where the kid's placed every time. Incarceration in and of itself is not sufficient to deprive a parent of parental rights. If they're in jail, county jail or whatever, and they're going to get out soon, they could still, have custody of their child. I don't go over this too much, but if the child in the case that you're reviewing is Native American, like, officially part of a tribe, like Cherokee or Choctaw or Chickasaw, something like that, they would fall under the Indian Child Welfare Act. And if they do, then there's certain criteria that are kind of special to them that the judge has to follow. One is placement, prioritization, place in their own home, place in a relative's home, place in a tribal home, place in a different tribal home, and then traditional foster care. So if you skip just straight from placement in an own home to traditional foster care, that would not be following the Indian Child Welfare Act rules. In writing recommendations, again, you already kind of looked at one, but you want to be brief, accurate, professional, advisory. Don't tell the judge what they should do. Recommend what the judge should do. As you can imagine, that may not go over very well. You're making a statement, so don't ask a question. Don't say, well, what about this? Because the judge is going to be reading this, not answering it. Here's some other examples. We already looked at one real world example, but here's a few other good ones. DHS reports the father's making progress. Progress continues. The board recommends trial unification with comprehensive community-based or home-based services. That's a child welfare service. So you're kind of giving a little bit of a reason why you're recommending what you're recommending. You're not doing it, you're saying like in the first one, the father is making progress. So I've reviewed this. looks like the father's making progress. You're not just going with, I recommend comprehensive home-based services. You need to say a little bit on the why. And how it's kind of from your perspective. At the end, again, this is something Christina worries about for Oklahoma County, and your chair will worry about for all the other boards. The recommendation copies need to go to every body that's involved with the court. So that would be, judge, any attorneys, assistant district attorney, DHS, all of those folks. This is something good to know. You're not going to get in legal trouble for making a recommendation. So if you're totally off base, it's okay, because you're following under a rebuttal presumption, basically that you are acting in good faith on behalf of the court, whether it ends up, being something that really worked or not. We already went over the Open Meeting Act. Confidentiality and conflict of interest, especially in rural communities, you're going to know these people. It's okay if you know them. It's okay if you share a little bit, if it relates to don't gossip, but if it relates to that case, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that Sally got a new job, or yeah, I saw that kid the other day and it looks like they're attending school again. If you share information about that family because you know it, that's okay. You want to recuse yourself, not participate in the recommendation if you know that family really well. Like they're a student and you're a teacher, or, I don't know, the family super well, like they're over at your house all the time. You can still share information, but you just don't want to participate in the recommendation. As far as keeping the information confidential, imagine these families are in their really going through really tough times, and they don't need or want their business shared, and that's not our role. So those, and you can certainly be removed as a partner pretty quick for sharing information you shouldn't. If you're doing it if you're gathering information so that you can make a good recommendation, that's great. If you're sharing information just because you want to share information, that's not going to work. So, any questions? I think it's pretty common sense. Wanted to mention our state post-adjudication review board. I mentioned that earlier, but I think it's good knowing coming in as a volunteer or potential volunteer. We have a state governing board for PARB that's got 8 folks from local PARB boards, 5 judges on there, 5 folks in the general public, and some foster parents. Like we've got Sarah Harrion from the Foster Care and Adoptive Association. We have Chris Siemens from another foster care group. We got some really good people on there. We got Daniel Herring from the Department of Human Services. Got some folks from the Office of Juvenile Affairs. And so they look, they also look to see how they can support your efforts as well. So where we're at and where we're going, I already kind of shared with you the map. Right now, we've got, after COVID, it's closer to 300 state and local level volunteers. I appreciate you guys shoring up the ranks again, getting back out there. In calendar year 2018, which is the latest numbers I have, those volunteers spent over 10,000 volunteer hours. We do want you to report your volunteer hours. That's how we get some federal funding. That's what pays for Christina and I. It's that federal funding from DHS for e-money. They reviewed 6,500 cases that included almost 8,000 kids, so that's quite a lot. We had 47 active boards. I think we're down to about 41 right now, 42. A lot of good people out there doing good work. Just so you know kind of where we're going, we're trying to build the membership back up, obviously fill more boards. improve our relationship with tribal and Indian child welfare, also with foster parents. We're in the process of actually trying to make our recommendation work and be entered into a database and be done electronically. That'll be coming down over the next year. I think that's pretty exciting. And of course, starting new boards. And again, like I said earlier, you know, Christina and I's job is to provide training and technical assistance, help with relationships. We can be the good cop or the bad cop. You know, Christina and I will flip coins, see who's going to do what. You know, can help you. So please reach out. So that's our contact information. Kim's not on the call. She covers Tulsa County. But you know, obviously we're a pretty small staff, so we talk pretty regularly. So that is the PowerPoint. Everybody still awake? Do I need to put the hat back on?
Keith, this is Chris. I'm going to have to jump off, but I will watch the recording for anything that we might have missed, okay?
Okay, sounds good. I think we're about done anyway.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, any questions or thoughts? So it's all your Oklahoma County. So, and you've already attended one.
Yes.
Laura, you're Oklahoma County as well. So is Andrew. Paige is Canadian. Paige, you and I have to talk. I've been trying to, I've been getting with the old Canadian County group about getting back together. And once we do that, we'll certainly have our first meeting in a while, and certainly invite you to that. Sheila, you're in Enid. You've got good. You're covered well with Cindy. So just stick close to Cindy, and you're golden.
I just wanted to tell.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, if needed, I worked Oklahoma County and I know Oklahoma County really well, but I could also, if needed, step into a Logan. I live in Logan also, so.
Good. We don't have something in Logan yet right now.
We did. I was just going to tell Oklahoma County, Laura, Giselle, and Andrew. I think I found a date. I'm going to be doing a new member orientation that is specific to Oklahoma County. And we'll go over the recommendation forms and things, you know, to look for just in Oklahoma County. Tentatively, I have it. I think I can do it on June 10th. And that's tentative, but once I get it nailed down, you will certainly know. And like I said, it's more specific just to Oklahoma County. So just wanted to tell y'all.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Wait, Laura wants to say something.
Oh, I have a question.
Huh?
Is that okay? The question is, what about when kids have siblings? Does that kind of with our review, how does that work?
You mean like siblings that have been previously adopted or are no longer
Right.
associated with the case?
Well, the siblings that are actually like in, like that are not in permanency yet. Do we know about those, or like, do we have information about those that would help us in developing recommendations?
Sometimes it'll be mentioned in the ISP progress report, or I do have a case that I'm looking at where one child, it's 3 children, but only one child is in DHS custody, adjudicated, deprived. The other 2 are under what they call DHS supervision. They're still in the home, but DHS is still kind of supervising, you know, and I've seen that happen before, but I've also seen where, say the mother, it's a baby with substance exposed. Well, the mom has had prior child welfare history, and her previous children have been adopted out or in guardianship or whatever. So DHS will try to find those placements and see if they'll take the new baby as well. And they can call that a kinship placement. And I've seen that a lot too.
Okay.
They want to try as best they can to keep families together if they can,
Okay.
in one capacity or another. So,
Right. That's helpful to know. Thanks.
yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts?
I guess my question is about future trainings. How many trainings or training hours do we need per year or
Per year.
per year?
Well,
How many?
yeah, I'd like you to, I don't remember what the exact amount is you're supposed to have, but you just attend 1 or 2, hour or 2-hour training a year. I think that's fine. I'm getting ready to, I mean, hopefully we'll send out enough training things that you might be interested in that you'll kind of want to do a few things. Getting ready to send out a whole list of trainings pretty soon. Some DHS stuff and that sort of thing. But as far as the requirement, just 1 training a year.
Yeah,
Thank
before
you.
COVID, we used to have an annual conference, and that's how you would get your training hours in. So I don't know what to do on that, but Keith's been doing a really good job of putting together these trainings with interesting subjects, like, you know, like you said, one that's geared toward domestic violence or Indian child welfare, mental health, and people come and present at these, and those are really, try to catch one if you can. Those are pretty good.
Yeah, I was just pulling up my spreadsheet because I've been kind of working on that, and I'll be, like I said, sending an email out soon. But Megan Brewer, who's high up in permanency at Child Welfare, she's going to be talking about court improvement program, and then also the Family First program within DHS. I've got Tim from the Oklahoma Supreme Court talking about mediation, court mediation. Unite Us Oklahoma is going to do a presentation. So just all kinds. I mean, but yeah. That's all I can say about that.
Thank you.
I mean, you're volunteers. No one's going to kick you off for not getting your volunteer time in, but I'm hoping that you will find it interesting enough to attend 1 or 2 during the year.
Oh, I have another question. I'm going to have to study my acronyms. What does OKSA stand for? It was just used as an example in one of those case studies in the record.
That's the Oklahoma Successful Adulthood Program. It used to be called the Independent Living Program. They just changed the name of it.
Okay.
I don't know why, but they did.
It's a service that the Department of Human Services provides within child welfare, and it's targeted at kids that are older, so like 16, 17, right, Christina? And helps them get driver's license, helps them set goals for themselves, helps them get into school, colleges or junior colleges, something you wouldn't be doing with a 6-year-old,
We also have a housing fund and Section 8 vouchers for young people who can't reunify.
Great.
All right, anybody else? Well, I want to encourage you all to, I mean, first, thanks for your interest in spending your volunteer hours with us, and this is important work. It can be, it can be a little meticulous at times, but it is important work. And please reach out to Christina and I, and you'll learn by participating. It's definitely a lot of on-the-job training too.
A lot of hands-on.
All right. Well, thank you. Catch you later.
It was nice to meet everybody.
Yeah. Thank you all very much. Nice to meet you.
You
Too.
Bye-bye.